talk about a project that we've been working on for a little while now. We're trying to improve the way that people use Netbox and as a source of truth and flow through to impact assessment, which is sort of a term that I'd like to, I guess, provide some, put out there as an idea and see what people think and build on this tool and improve the practice of automation in monitoring and delivering monitoring outcomes to real people as opposed to nerds, I guess, if, no offense to everyone here. Firstly, just want to say good day. Yeah, we're a ISINGA partner from Australia. We provide monitoring services, licensing, training, enterprise monitoring support. We have a bunch of customers ranging from TV stations, ISPs, all sorts of businesses of all sorts of industries, and that means that we've gathered a fair amount of experience involved in building monitoring solutions. So one of the first things I wanted to cover off was the idea that when something happens, we lose a device on a network or a critical alert, we have hosts and services we monitor, or metrics that have happened. It's very often difficult to know exactly what system that affects. And people who are actually using our computers that we look after or the systems that we monitor want to know that they're going to get paid. They want to know that payroll is going to work. They want to know that their spreadsheets are going to save properly. They want to know that their web applications are going to work. They can check into a website, however it might be. And there are a number of ideas that people have dealt with that, but the actual knowledge of that system is often poorly reflected in how we monitor them. So this is the journey we need to go on, and part of that is reflected in how we deal with monitoring. So we talk about monitoring, and people tend to go on a kind of journey when it comes to monitoring. They realize they need it. They add some monitoring. They realize the monitoring is kind of noisy. They try and come up with some automation around it. And what we're trying to achieve is sort of what we see as the next sort of generation of monitoring configuration automation and delivering value to people, which is this idea of sort of impact assessment. It's one idea, and the cool kids will tell you that it's observability and all the rest of it, and that's okay. But we're talking about particularly monitoring infrastructure that people rely on and use for everyday things like video feeds or large format printers or machines that cut wood or whatever it might be in terms of real world uses, payroll being the example in the prior one. And documentation goes on a similar journey. We start off with how do we know where things are? Where is the payroll system? How does it actually work? We attempt to write down what it might be. Hey, if only we had some documentation, we would have known where the payroll system went. We would have all been paid. Then we go, oh, well, let's put that in a wiki because we need more people to contribute. Let's have some spreadsheets and all those things. And then, the more enlightened progression moves on to a database that actually contains the right schema for what we need to do. And then hopefully we can get to the point where we can build some automation around that and have that documentation kept up to date and not rot away. And, documentation's only as good as people who actually read it. And so eventually we want to get to the point where we can automate these things. And so monitoring has a similar situation. I wanted to drill further down into the monitoring problem and realize that over time, and my notes are missing here, so I'm remembering all of this, over time, your monitoring solution starts out being well-tuned and everything's green and it's all great. And then as organizations grow and change and people come and leave, you start to get a bit of degradation. And so what we've done at SOL1 and with a number of members in the community is build out monitoring automation to try and improve that, where we have a source of truth, and we've chosen Netbox for that, and you don't need to choose Netbox, but this is a good example. And we have ISINGA for that and Director, and we've written a tool that merges those two together to address this exact problem. I'm getting to the impact assessment part, but firstly we want to talk about Netbox. Now I'm going to have trouble here switching out of this thing, and hopefully we can switch to Netbox, wherever that is. Where's my window? So, who here's used Netbox before? Anyone? Got a couple of Netbox users? Excellent. Netbox is really up and coming in terms of the world of data center information managers. You go to the Cisco website, it's like, how do I use Netbox and Ansible together? And plenty of people are getting behind it. It's an open source tool. It's Django. It came out of DigitalOcean, and it knows is basically a database for everything that goes in a data center in your organization. So that would be devices, cabling, wireless, all these things you can see here. and each device has a very complete model about how it goes together, what interfaces it has, VLANs, all those kind of things. So that's Netbox in a nutshell. And the fantastic feature about Netbox, the most important feature in my mind, is that it has a great API for managing all of this stuff. So the REST API lets you read and write from every object in very sensible ways, so you can build out automation. So we have, for example, Ansible playbooks that interact with Netbox. We have a list of all the machines that need backups, and we have a playbook that reads Netbox, forms a list of backups, does the backups, then updates the journal in Netbox that the backups have been done. And we have, a monitoring automation where we can grab all the machines that have backups and make sure that the backups for those machines are being monitored, and have all those works with tags and grouping and how that all works out nicely. Back to my slide here, wherever that went. Here we are. So that's Netbox real quick. Come on. Come on, internet. I really must have walked into the wrong church yesterday. Someone hates me. All right, so another thing that we've attempted to do, that the Icinga guys have done, is built out the business process module. Now, the business process module attempts to express this idea we have of where the payroll system is. What are the components that go together that, when we add them together either with logic or however it might be, can provide value to a business in terms of saying what its overall state is. And we have used this module extensively. We use it to monitor all sorts of things, and that lets us have, so for example, in TV stations, many of the video signals are delivered with very redundant paths. So you have an A path, a B path, maybe a C path. And so the business process module helps us check each one of those paths and then deliver to the business a state for the overall path, whether it's degraded or however it might work. The business process module is not a perfect tool, however, and one of the problems I have with it is that it expresses in the monitoring the real state of how the infrastructure goes together, which is kind of nowhere else. So there's not a great way, when you look at the business process module, for people who are system owners to necessarily, well, in fact, it might be the only place that the actual truth of how the system is working and whether things are up or down in that same redundant fashion is actually stored. There isn't necessarily a way anywhere else in the, there'll be a diagram, maybe a Visio diagram about how the high-level design works. Maybe the diagram reflects how the engineer actually built the system. But realistically, when you have a monitoring system, its idea is to test that each parts of the system are working, and the business process module is really where that knowledge is actually kept. And with the Netbox Path plugin that I'm about to show you, we attempted to take that knowledge out of the business process module and put it back into the documentation, the structured documentation that's inside Netbox, and then use that to figure out what needs to happen. So Netbox also does have an idea of cables. Cables are great for joining machines together physically, but they don't really cover where a payroll system lives or how your mail flows through the system or how DNS works. So the Netbox data itself wasn't enough, which is why we developed a plugin. An important thing to note is that Netbox these days has the idea of contacts. Contacts are a very helpful way of saying which people care about which machines, and they can be grouped together in roles. And of note, the automation that we have that takes the monitoring configuration out of Netbox and into Director can include contacts and then can group those together, and we can create notification apply rules based on their contacts and all those things, and that works quite well. So I'm just going to skip over that because we're running out of time. So Netbox Path, what does Netbox Path do? It's a plugin to Netbox itself. It extends parts of that. I'll switch over and show you in a second. It covers off the relationships, the logical relationships between Netbox objects. So that might be devices, virtual machines, circuits, racks, VLANs, VRFs, interfaces themselves. The point being is that a user can use Netbox Path to plot the process or plot the progression of a service through any one of these devices. And I'll show you some examples that make more sense. Of note, though, we're using a tool called Cytoscape. Has anyone used Cytoscape before? Probably not. pretty obscure, very powerful JavaScript library that was designed to model proteins and how they go together. And so it has a biological root, and it's quite powerful JavaScript, open source, really cool tool. Thanks to the Cytoscape developers, we were able to use that to build out Netbox paths. So let's have a look at it real quick and see how we go. All right, so a path lives down here as a plugin. We have different types of paths. We do need the internet for this to work. So I'll pick a simple example here. This one is NHL live to Japan, NHL being the National Hockey League. So we have a path composition window, and it's loading. Here we go. And then a path flows from left to right here. So on the left hand, we've got a video encoder, we've got a switch, a router, and then a carrier, another carrier, and another router, and then another video decoder at the other end. And so Cytoscape lets us quickly add elements, move them around, rearrange them. Oops, this is going to be tricky. You know, it's all graphical, and then we can click on a device, see it in Netbox, track it down, and immediately this particular path in and of itself gives the users of Netbox a way of just tracking how a system works. How does the video flow from here to there in a way that is related to objects and devices that exist in their real database. And that, I think, has immediate benefit. On top of that, if you actually open a device, say for example here's a router, this is using the Netbox demo data, so none of this is real. We added a tab here in the plugin that shows you what paths a device is on. So anyone going to Netbox and going, oh, I want to do some work on this switch, I'm going to pull the power on it, wait a minute, have a look here, it's carrying all these services, I need to tell these people because a path itself has contacts. And so that way we can use this information to figure out, oh, well, we need to contact this person if the path goes down, how that works. Now, each of these things has an API as well, and there's a separate API for impact assessment and that. So let me switch back to here. Where are we up to? All right, so objects have paths and paths have objects. That's useful. Let's have a quick look at the API. Sorry, I'm a bit clumsy here. So if I pull up the API for a given device, I'm going to struggle to find the right keys on this keyboard. I think that's the right one. Nope. What have I done wrong there, Omar? Get rid of contacts. Thank you. Cool. So typical Netbox REST API, and so we can use this to query the path itself. Now, a path, importantly, this is a graph, a Cytoscape graph. So, whoa, has hectic zoom. Where are we? Click fit. Hope for the best. Okay. So a word on graph theory, real quickly. These are Netbox edges and nodes. Sorry, these are Cytoscape edges and nodes. And so each of the edges and nodes can have metadata. And that metadata can be, labels or anything else we want to describe. And if I go to another path that's a little bit less TV station, I don't know what that means. We'll click this one and hope for the best. I'll click save. How about that? And then I'll click up here. I reckon that was prompting me to save. Here we are. Here's a more sophisticated example of a path. This is a Zimbra cluster that I made up. So this one lets me have different types of edges. So we've got HTTP or LDAP, SMTP, and then each of the nodes can have groupings. The edges, which are the lines between the nodes, have direction, and that's very useful. And the direction is expressed in the API. So the REST API allows us to provide a programmatic way for other scripts to query this data and say, well, if this machine goes down, what's affected and how is it affected? What is it that we need to worry about? What kind of services have we, impacted by killing this particular cluster member or anything? And so we can do redundant paths. We can add labels to paths. Now, realistically, one way of thinking about this particular diagram is that it's actually a few paths on the one diagram, and that's helpful for people to understand how our Zimbra cluster works. But it's also useful to kind of track this. So, for example, I've expressed a multi-master cluster down here because this is a multi-master LDAP replica, and this is how Zimbra mailboxes work. I don't know if people are familiar with Zimbra, but it's a useful kind of clustered application which uses lots of virtual machines to go together and provide a mail system. Now the topmost member up there is a circuit ID, so that's a Netbox representation of an internet provider. It's got internet access, and I just wanted to have a word there that it makes a lot of sense that we have contacts for paths and that devices have contacts, but some of the contacts in your paths aren't people inside your organization. It might be an ISP, and so you might want to be able to do things like receive an outage notification from your ISP and use that to track the circuit, find which paths that circuit affects, and then figure out the impact, and then contact the people because the ISP has given you an outage notification on this particular circuit, find all the paths that that circuit belongs to, and then contact, Dwight and tell him that his email's not going to work. So that's how the Netbox Path plugin works. Did you have a question? It is a good point, yeah. So, I'm giving a lightning talk tomorrow about notification plugins, so we can have a chat about that then. That is a problem. So there is also a separate impact assessment API, what's the URL for that? It's a bit more typing, isn't it? Up here? Cool. Thanks. Impact? Like 8, leave 8? Say equals like it's easy. Do I do question mark? That's also 8, and what was it? Just type ampersand TYP. Oh my god, I'm so retarded. What was it? Equals DCIM dot devices, like this. Hopefully that works. Sorry, I had all these URLs all worked out. Wait up, I might be able to click them from the other one. That doesn't exist. You know what, I think I have them here in speaker notes somewhere. Let me see if I can find them. Where are we? That's that one. Sorry guys, doing the best we can. All right. Is that the right one, Omar? Excellent. So this is the actual impact assessment API for Path, and what the difference here is that we get the elements on the path and whether they're upstream or downstream of each other. So this is a pretty simple path. What was the other path? 8, I think. We had a more complicated example. No, did that wrong. ID 550. Oh, that's great. This is going to be a nightmare to type. Anyway, whatever. We'll just go back to this one. It's a REST API. We can figure it out. So the point here is that direction is upstream or downstream. Each of the devices has that depending on which way the arrows are. And then we've written a notification script for Isinga that lets us connect to this API and determine whether or not the direction is going to be impacted. If I go back to my slides, we can see here a typical notification. Just wanted to pull that up. So this notification is a modification of our enhanced email notification, where you get sort of pertinent information directly in your inbox instead of just a standard, hey, your server is down and it's got a cryptic name for the server. The idea here is that we deliver actionable, useful information to people. Now, we've sent a copy of the actual path, so we added to Netbox Path the ability for a PNG to be statically generated for each of the paths and saved into the API and then retrieved later, so that the notification script can provide people, who are interested in their paths, some notification that things have gone down. So in this case, it's probably worthwhile understanding that, well, the intended use case here is that system owners of various software, for example, say in this case Zimbra, might not be the normal monitoring users. They're not system administrators, they're not IT guys or anything like that. So there might just be a user or a business, an upper level manager, and they might want to, the alert system now is starting to provide them with some value. And you can tune your notification rules to be able to say, well, okay, in the event that, for example, all of the servers go down, we really do need to tell Bob. But if it's only just one of them, we can probably skip it and we'll just get Jeff out of bed and he can fix it and Bob never needs to know about it. So this gives us a different way of managing things. And yes, there are dependencies and there are lots of other ways we can manage them in the system already. However, this places that information into Netbox and then provides an API for us to be able to do whatever we need to do with it. All right. I'm going to cut it short there because we've dragged on long enough and I've wasted enough of your time. Anyone got any questions there before you kick me off? The code's on our GitHub. You're welcome to give it a go. Omar wrote most of it here. If you need some personalized tech support, we're here until Thursday evening. Happy to have any questions, and thanks for your time.